And now it's time for our weekly energy update with Dan McTeague, president of Canadians for Affordable Energy.
Nima, thank you for that. And we are now, of course, heading into the fall season. And with that, usually as the leaves are tumbling, so have gasoline prices. As expected, we have made that shift from summer blend gasoline right across Canada to winter spec gasoline. That is definitely a thing. As we've mentioned here before, summer blends take components and processes that are a lot more expensive to produce. Alkylates, actually, is what they're called. In the winter, from about the mid part of September right until the mid part of April, they switch over, remove that component, and add butane. That's so that butane, which is of course very volatile, but great when you need to get your engine running on a cold morning. It's the perfect solution, and it's much cheaper. So we've seen a lot across a lot of Eastern Canada what amounts to a net decrease of at least 8 cents a litre. In some places like Ontario, it's dropped another 3 from that. So far this week alone, an 11-cent drop. Quebec, same thing. PEI and Nova Scotia got their 8-cent decrease as expected, as predicted. But Newfoundland and, of course, New Brunswick decided, they like their formula. They don't mind keeping these prices higher for consumers. Because we know in those provinces really like their regulated prices and think some kind of a security blanket. Well, they're being fleeced by about $5 or $6 on a tank full. So I'll let them discuss that with their politicians. But frankly, these are regulated bodies whose time has come and gone. Predicting gas prices is a thing now. And of course, it means that as long as markets have a particular price, usually people have a 2 days heads up, which they're getting from me and many others who've since copied my work. So I think it's perhaps time for the Maritimes to move in a very different direction. Speaking of different directions, we have two commodities: oil, which is moving up with some limited exceptions, back to $91 a barrel for West Texas Intermediate. And Nima, it's actually going to 94, 95 for Brent. But gasoline seems to be very reluctant to move, not just because of that switchover, where there has been a pretty significant difference in price, but we have to recognize that when a refinery operates and says, hey, there's a shortage of diesel prices are going up, we want to get more diesel in the market. Well, they have to go through more barrels of oil. So they're buying more oil, and as a result, depressing the price of gasoline. You cannot at a refinery turn a switch on or off and say, well, one day I want to produce more diesel out of that barrel of oil and no gasoline. It doesn't work that way. You want more diesel, you have to go through and process more oil. And to do that, you're producing, as a consequence, as a byproduct, a lot more gasoline. So that's really why we're seeing this kind of odd situation, which oil prices are going up. Diesel prices continue to climb, although there have been a bit of a pause here and there. But gasoline prices have, to a large extent, cratered. So anyone who thinks that there's a connection between oil and gasoline only has to know over the past week the two are completely disconnected, and that often happens. So speaking of disconnection and fundamentals, what we're looking at across the country, though, next week is, I think, a reversal of fortunes, slowly but surely. And towards the ending of September and this time next week, Nima, I think we're going to be looking at gas prices on average on Canada moving up about 4 cents a litre. So we're already starting to see signs of that. In Vancouver, in the lower mainland, gas prices are heading up 7 cents a litre from 2.1 or 201 a litre all the way up to 208 a litre, or 207.9. The same will be pretty much for the rest of British Columbia, which I think we'll see probably about a 4 to 5 cent increase, pushing us back to the 179, 180 range. Alberta, don't expect much there. Always quiet. Refineries and in particular gas stations tend to hold on to their retail margins, to those retail numbers. So there's prices going up or down. They tend to wait a week and a half. I don't see anything happening there. Ditto for Saskatchewan, where again, in places like Saskatoon, $1.55 for a liter of gasoline. I almost feel like driving out there from Toronto just to have the pleasure of filling up at prices that are obviously below cost. Winnipeg, Manitoba, same thing. Range bound at the 165 range, maybe up 2 cents a litre. But again, they don't move very much. But when they do, it's usually quite dramatic. Ontario, Quebec, look for them to move back to the $1.68 range in Ontario, $1.80 in Montreal, Quebec City. And for the Maritimes, well, same thing goes. those two provinces, the holdouts, Newfoundland and Newfoundland and New Brunswick, look for gas prices to drop about 6 cents a liter next week, while the other parts, PEI and of course Nova Scotia, look for those prices to probably stabilize with very little in the way of change. Diesel will be the big issue over the next couple of weeks. We'll have more to talk about it this time next week. Thanks, Nima.